Hey guys, it's me, Selena, with Selena Thinking Out Loud, bringing you another Storytime Sunday, Time with God. And today we're going to be talking about how Ruth overcame objection. So, as a child, I was introduced to Jesus Christ early. So I would go to church morning, and then we had a lunch break, and then we have to go back to church in the evening. And at that time, I really didn't understand the importance of how important Christ would be in my life down the line as I got older and went through all my own pre-teen years and my early 20s, and then trying to figure out who I was and all that dating and all that other great stuff that we all go through. So by now, in my 30s, I realized, gosh, God is really awesome. You know what I mean? And he really has an impact on our lives. But some people in other cultures and in other lifestyles didn't get introduced to Christ or have no idea who God is. And so when we find out about Ruth, we find out that Ruth is a descendant of Moab, who was actually born through incest between Lot and his actual eldest daughter. And so we find out that in the Moabite tribe of people, they served many gods. And at the time, Israel was camped out in Moab because they were moving from Egypt, which you know about Egypt, and Moses and all them, and they were moving on to the promised land. But they settled in Moab for a while before they moved forward to that. And many of the people, some of the people in the Israelites adopted some of Moabites' godly rituals and worshiping their gods, and God killed off 24,000 Israelites because of it. Whoa. And so we find out that in this stage of the Bible, Ruth is married into the Israelite lifestyle, her culture, through one of Naomi's sons, who marries a Moabite while they're living in Moab. And so years have gone by, and Naomi's husband, Elimelech, and her two sons are all died. So it's Naomi, who's a widow, and her two daughter-in-laws are widows. Naomi is forcing them. Now, I'm old, my sons are dead, your husbands are dead, you're a widow, you're young, you can still find a new husband and live out your life. Go ahead, and I think it would be safer for you to stay with your kind, your Moab tribe of people. And so one of them do go, but Ruth says, no, I want to stay with you, Naomi. I want to care for you and take care of you, and I will serve your God and do whatever I must do to stay and be with you. And we find out that in Ruth chapter 1, verse 16 here and through 18, where she says, but Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me. So when Naomi realized that Ruth was not going to back down, she wasn't going to go back to her old rituals of the Moabite culture, she's going to stay with her and live off and be a godly, God-fearing woman. Ruth says, okay, she stopped urging her, and she says, okay, let's go. So Naomi's like, I'm fed up, I'm tired, I feel kind of down because I left my homeland, and I'm in Moabite land, and I had a husband and all that, and everybody died off, and now I'm this widow and I ain't got nobody. So she's saying, when she found out that prosperity was coming back to her original homeland, she says, I'm going back to my homeland. So she brings Ruth with her, this Moabitess that nobody is liking very much, because the Israelites was really oppressed by the Moabites for many years. So anybody that's a Moabite is not in good standing with the Israelites, okay? So Ruth is really going into her own lion's den, so to speak, in this new culture. And so we find out that now Ruth comes back, her people welcome her back after so many years of not being with them. And then they say, well, who is this? And they say, this is Ruth, the Moabitess. She is my son's wife. She's a widow now. And so they say, oh, okay, all right. So they all keeping an eye on her, and they ain't really welcoming her with open arms. So we find out, how does Ruth fight through this? How does she fight through this rejection of this new culture? How does she submerge herself into this new way of being? How does she prove herself worthy? How does she prove to this new culture of people that she believes in their God, that she wants to be a part of their world, and that she is not back, she's not taking no for an answer? So we find out in Ruth chapter 2, and we're going to pretty much read the whole chapter of chapter 2 except for verse 13. So if you have your Bibles, we'll jump right into this chapter 2. So we see here now, Naomi had a relative on her husband's side from the clan of Elimelech, a man of standing whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, let me go to the field and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor. Because remember, it's so hard for her to find favor with anybody. So Naomi says, okay, that's fine. Go ahead, my daughter. So she went out and began to glean in the fields behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she found herself walking in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. Just when Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters, the Lord be with you, the Lord bless you, they called back. Boaz asked the foreman of his harvesters, who's the young woman? Whose young woman is that? And so the foreman replies, she is the Moabitess who came back from Moab with Naomi. She said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters. She went into the fields and has worked steadily from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter. So Boaz said to Ruth, my daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with my servant girls. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the girls. I have told the men not to touch you. And whenever you are thirsty, go and get the drink from the water jars the men have filled. Okay? At this, she bowed down with her face to the ground. She exclaimed, why have you found favor in my eyes? Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you notice me, a foreigner? Boaz replied, I have been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you have left your father and your mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you've never known before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. So we find out in verse 14, at mealtime, Boaz says to her, come over here. Have some bread and dip in the wine vinegar. When she sat down with the harvesters, he offered her some roasted grain. She ate all she wanted and had some left over. As she got up to glean, Boaz gave orders to his men, even if she gathers among the sheaves, don't embarrass her. Rather, pull out some stalks for her from the bundles and leave them for her to pick up, and don't rebuke her. So Ruth gleaned in the fields until evening. Then she threshed the barley she had gathered, and it amounted to about an ephah. And she carried it back to town and her mother-in-law. And her mother-in-law saw it and how much she had gathered. Ruth also brought out and gave her what she had left over after she had eaten enough. So verse 19, her mother-in-law asked her, where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice of you. Then Ruth told her mother-in-law about the one at whose place she had been working. The name of the man I have worked for today is Boaz, she said. The Lord bless him. Naomi said to her daughter-in-law. He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead, she added. The man is our relative, our close relative. He is one of our kinsmen redeemers. Then Ruth, the Moabitess, said, he even said to me, stay with my workers until they finish harvesting all of my grain. Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it will be good for you, my daughter, to go with his girls, because in someone else's field you might be harmed. So Ruth stayed close to the servant girls of Boaz to glean until the barley and the wheat harvests were finished. And she lived with her mother-in-law. So we find out that Boaz was put in place right at the right time to be that person that Ruth needed, that support she needed to prove herself, to show other people that she was worthy enough to work. She was going to work hard, and she had somebody else who was going to be her supporter along with Naomi, who wasn't of her Moab background or her Moab culture. So we go on to see in the life of Ruth that eventually Naomi shows Ruth how to get an even more good favor with Boaz, and they end up getting married, and she ends up having more kids, and Naomi ends up being a grandma. So it's really interesting how God works. Sometimes we have to go into certain situations that's not all that what it's cracked up to be. Sometimes we are rejected because of our race. We rejected because of our, our lifestyles. Our cultures, our gender. But what do we do in those midst of adversity or in those obstacles when we feel like we're outcasts? How could we emulate what we saw Ruth go through as an example? And it says here in my Bible, here in my notes, we too can refuse to accept the rejections that the world uses to keep us from following hard after God. When you decide that you're not going to continue to do the things you used to do, because you were a part of a certain tribe of people or a certain clique, and now you're deciding to be your own woman or your own man and stand on your own 2 feet and follow God's laws and what he wants for you to do, or the purpose that he has for you to do that doesn't align with what your friends think you should be or what your parents think you should be. And so you feel like you're that outcast. So we find out here that during those times, those are the most important times that we must really trust in God, because what? We know that the Lord Jesus Christ will advise us. He will protect us. He will what? He will provide for us for the rest of our lives, even when we feel like we're alone and we're that outcast, just like Ruth was, right? So the question for you, when have you ever felt like you were an outcast, where you didn't quite belong, or you were going after some dream or some aspiring to do something, open a business or something in your life, or you felt like you were, separated or outcast because of your gender or your race? What did you do to overcome that? Leave your comments below this video. So I thank you so much for joining me for another Storytime Sunday in my women's series in the Bible, Women in the Bible. And I hope you learned more about Ruth and learned how she overcome her obstacles and rejections to become a strong woman and prove herself. So if you enjoyed this video, I hope you give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos from me during the week, including more Storytime Sundays, then subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I look forward to reading your comments and learning more about you as well in the process. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.